Darlene Morgan here, Morgan Law Group. Today we're going to talk about estate planning checkup for your own parents. So a lot of times when people come in to meet with me, they get informed and they've seen how important it is to do this planning for themselves. And then they get an awareness all of a sudden about their own parents. And it dawns on them that if something were to happen to their parents, they could be the ones who end up with a mess on their hands if their own parents' estate plan isn't set up correctly, which is true. So they start to then ask me, what do I say? This might be a touchy subject in different families. What do I say so that, I can start this conversation with my parents? Or what am I looking for to make sure that my parents have it set up correctly and that they have everything in order and their plan isn't outdated, and that I would be able to help them if something unexpected happened to my parents. So this is it's a great topic, and every family is so different. My family was really open about talking about financial subjects, but not all families are. So, the obvious is if your parents' estate plan is not set up properly, your own inheritance could be at risk. You could end up with a probate on your hands or a conservatorship, going to court, or wasting money unnecessarily that doesn't need to be wasted, or going through a crisis situation and having things be unnecessarily stressful during an already stressful time. So here's some steps. I have 4 steps that you can take now to really start this conversation with your parents to make sure that their plan is going to work. So step 1 is start the conversation. And if you haven't already, it's really, whether it's the holidays or some other family occasion, to begin asking them, if some medical crisis occurred, will one of us kids have the ability to step in and make medical decisions on your behalf? Sometimes that is a easier way to get the conversation started, because you're not talking about money and you really are talking about mom's medical care, dad's medical care. How are we going to make sure that I can talk to your doctors? Obviously something unexpected could happen to any of us at any time. But what it does is it makes sure that they start to realize that there does need to be legal authority in place. So starting the conversation, heaven forbid, if there was some sort of an accident, have you legally named someone to be able to step in for you and make those kinds of legal decisions, medical decisions for you. Step 2 is to review legal title on all assets. So what this means is that, the most common problem that I see really is that the assets are not titled correctly, meaning bank accounts, life insurance designations, even maybe the deed on real property, every single asset, because what we're trying to do is avoid probate and avoid a conservatorship. So every single asset needs to either be titled in the trust or otherwise titled correctly. Because if it's not, that's when you could be looking at a court process, probate, conservatorship. That would be expensive, time-consuming, and just difficult on the family. So, really what we want to do is make sure that we avoid all that by having everything titled correctly. Step 3, I would say review all estate planning documents at least every 3 years. So, it's very common for people to sign their estate plan, put it on a shelf, never look at it again, and never hear from their lawyer. And time goes by, And as that estate planning binder is collecting dust up on the shelf, things are changing. Maybe things are changing with the law or the assets or the family or even your parents' wishes. So by reviewing it, just like we have regular scheduled maintenance on our cars or medical checkups, we need to also be checking up on our estate plan so we make sure that it works. So it's really just a matter of, we don't want the documents to become stale. And a lot of times people haven't really heard that term, and there's no bright line when I can tell you this is when it's stale. Some of the financial institutions like to see updated powers of attorney. Medical institutions like to see updated medical powers of attorney. I would say they're starting to become stale around 5 or 6 years. But it could be much sooner, and sometimes they'll even accept ones that are older than that. But we want to make sure that we're checking in on your parents' estate plan on a regular basis, so that none of those things happen. And it makes a stressful situation a lot easier when things have been sort of maintained all the way along. And finally, step 4 is plan to protect your inheritance. There's different ways that we address this. Sometimes it's through leaving your inheritance to you in an asset protected manner. And sometimes it's just making sure that all the ducks are in a row so that there's no unnecessary waste of money or fees spent that don't need to be spent. So most estate plans leave an inheritance outright, meaning a lump sum distribution, which is fine. That's very simple, but there's also that's not really protected, and it can be risky. So there is a way to leave an inheritance, your parents' assets to you, in a protected trust, which I love. I think it's a great way to make sure that anything that might come to you would be asset protected. Who doesn't want asset protection from divorce, lawsuits, and creditors? So life is busy. It's very easy to put these things off and say later, we'll look at this later. But I encourage you to get an estate plan review. We do estate plan reviews here, trust reviews. That's what you could call and say, my parents have an estate plan that was done years ago, and can we have a meeting for a trust review? And we'd be happy to help out with that and make sure that both you and your parents have the confidence and the peace of mind that their estate plan is updated and it's going to work and be easy and clear for the entire family if something unexpected happened.